It's go time.
Welcome to Quick Kicks here on Third Down Gamble with your host, Don Charbin, with special guest, Andew Hoskins of the Turf District podcast.
Welcome to Quick Kicks here on Third Down Gamble. Glad you could join us. Don Charbin with my very special guest again today, Andew Hoskins of the Turf District podcast, stepping up again with you just coming back from Elks camp. What was that like being there at Commonwealth?
Oh, it's always great to be back home. It's football Christmas, right? We get to be back and seeing players on the field and seeing plays happen and sitting up in the stands right now and putting on our judging glasses. It's one of the funnest times of the year. And I mean, it's been only a couple of days in, but I will take it. It's great to see guys and start to see a couple of guys stand out.
There's a ton of energy. I was at Rough Riders training camp that's being held in Saskatoon at Griffith Stadium at the University of Saskatchewan. Ton of excitement, ton of energy. It's football season when those guys are running out of the locker room. They're not just striding to the field. They want to get going.
Yeah, I will say that there was a good turnout on day one. Lots of fans to sit and watch as well. And I think there is a genuine curiosity of how is this team going to do under the new head coaching, the new whole coaching staff, and obviously the number of free agents they brought in. People want to see them on the field and see what that looks like. And so it was kind of nice to see. There was a fair number of people there yesterday. This morning, maybe not as many, but that might be because it was a little chillier too. But still enough that we're sitting and trying to kind of see who are going to be those next heroes on the team.
Yeah, you mentioned about being chilly at practice in Edmonton. Right now, where I am, I'm about 6 hours to the east of you. It's around 28.
28. Oh my goodness. Wow.
We're actually under threat of thunderstorm, if you can believe that, which would be the first ones of the year. And yay, if it happens. I love thunderstorms.
Yeah, me too. But yeah, no, we're at camp this morning. It was, it said 13, but it felt like 8 degrees. That wind was sharp, and we were all sitting in our various forms of sweaters and hoods. We actually looked like coaches, arms folded, just staring at everybody. It was wonderful.
It's part of the reason why I would love for the Grey Cup to be finished first weekend, first Sunday, first Saturday of November, so that the worst you would get is maybe 0, not minus 20, minus 30 that we've seen, not so much in Grey Cups, but in Western playoffs.
Sure. I get what you're saying. I mean, my only reason for wanting it in the first weekend is completely and utterly selfish, and that's my birthday weekend. So it'd be perfect to have the Grey Cup right at the same time. The thing is that I've been to, minus 25 games in October, been to that, it all over the place. So to me, whatever, it's, what did they get it up to, like the third weekend right now? It's not the end of the world, but yeah, I would rather be a little chilly and excited in May than need to be worrying about it at the end of the year when we're right there. So it's you know what though, at this point, every fan base, that's the thing. Everybody's out at training camp going, well, I wonder what it's going to be like in November, because everybody's 0-0 and we have a shot, right? So if nothing else, on top of seeing players back and plays happening, the hope is there at the beginning of the season, because you can see who's out there and what they might be able to do for your team this year.
Exactly. The overall mood across the league, and maybe there could be a couple exceptions, but it seems like everybody feels they've got a team that can compete. You look in the West, especially BC, given the troubles they had, and don't blame Nathan Rourke for this, but the troubles they had after he got back, that locker room went kablooey, and that team just disappeared right after that, mostly because of the way the management, the coaching staff was handling that situation. They're out of there now, new faces. The Lions feel a lot more confident. Calgary, Vernon Adams is there. You've got a new head coach in Edmonton. The Rough Riders went to the West Final. They feel confident. And, of course, the Blue Bombers, who have been there all along, still think that they can be back in Winnipeg to finish the season.
Yeah, I think the parity across it could be amazing. Now, it's tough to say when you look at some of these, you look at a team like Calgary where they have great starters. I don't know what's going to happen on the depth side. And I'm not sure what the coaching is like there. Don't get me wrong, Dave Dickinson has had some success as a coach, but we know the last few years that hasn't been the case. So I think that one's a bit of a question mark in the West at the moment. I think Saskatchewan takes another step forward, a second year under the same coach. I think Edmonton takes a step forward just because they have a new outlook, and they've brought in some good talent to balance the roster instead of just having it all be kind of on one side. And BC, I think I'm gonna have to wait and see what happens with them, because yes, you've got a full year of Nathan Rourke. You've got him being able to have a full training camp. But again, a brand new staff that seems a little bit pieced together, a little different than some of the other staffs that we've seen. So I'm curious to see how they kind of weather their storm as they go through to kind of get their team on the right footing. But we all know that Amar Doman isn't afraid to put a few dollars in to make them better. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, and I liked, in a way, what Ryan McMaden had to say when they had to forgive or give up their 2 first-round picks. He said, look, we spent that capital on Nathan Rourke and Matthew Betts.
Mm-hmm.
They did it last year. And that's a totally legitimate answer to a question that really a lot of people had on their minds. I think the Lions felt comfortable that we could get these 2 Canadians and forego another 2 at this point in time, because they still think the window is open for them to make a run. Now, they had been in West Finals prior. Their job is to get back there and get past it.
100%. I agree. Is the 2 picks at the beginning the end of the world when you're signing 2, what are believed to be top-notch Canadians? Like, yeah, that's basically what you want out of the draft anyway. So they still got the top 2 Canadians that would have fallen high in a draft anyway. So I don't think it was the unfortunate part. And I know you've chatted about this on your show before, is they probably need to change it up where it's, the 9th team gets one of the picks and the 8th team maybe gets the next pick and that type of thing. But the rules are the rules the way they were, and Calgary benefits, and we'll see if that helps them. They start to build their roster too.
Yeah, it is a bit of a quirky way of approaching it, but it also, I think there was the anomaly that Calgary traded away that pick. And
Right.
maybe that had something to do with the fact that they got it back. I've written to the league. I still haven't got an answer from them. And even for themselves, these are fluid things. They don't have all the answers, because you just don't encounter this very often, where a team goes over so big and then the team that they traded their pick with now has that pick back.
Yeah.
It's kind of very odd, but hey, it makes it fun.
Yeah. Well, makes it interesting. That's for sure. Yeah. I will agree with you there.
Now, the other story that's been coming out, other than the fact that teams are getting into camp and the veterans have reported now over the weekend, Zach Collaros won't be there opening weekend, partly because he was ignoring, and this is a reasonable thought, that when he was getting these messages, he thought it was spam, and he wasn't sure that he had to report with respect to his testing. That caught him out. My only advice would be Google search the number and see where it takes you.
Something, yeah, it's a little weird. I mean, I'm sure there's more to the story than we know. Like, I believe that to be the case. I don't think it was just, hey, I missed a phone call. Oh, you're suspended. Like, I'm sure there's other things, but I do feel like, as part of your job, that that there's going to be testing, and the team needs to do a better job, or the CFL needs to do a better job of making sure that the players are aware of where that call is coming from too, right? So it would come up CFL testing or whatever they do in their phone, then it isn't it looks less like a spam and more like a, hey, oh, I got to respond to this. Do you know what I mean? So I think there's probably blame on both sides, and likely there is some more to the story that we don't know, but I would yeah, it's interesting how this has played out, and how many other times has a guy missed a call and then got a 1 game suspension. Probably not very often.
It probably wasn't just a call.
Fair.
I don't think that the anti-doping agency would just leave one call, and if you miss it, that's it. It's probably a series of them, but if he ignored them all because he thought it was spam, what about the CFLPA in all of this? Aren't they telling their delegates, hey, guys, or their constituents, guys, pay attention to this. These are the numbers you need to know. If anti-doping is calling you,
Right.
This is their number. I don't really look at the CFL per se and say it's their responsibility. I think it's the PA.
Yeah, I could see that too. Like, I think it could be a joint effort. I mean, they both want it done for the sanctity of the game. They both want it, they both don't want to suspend players. Like, I have to feel that they don't want that to happen. So yeah, whatever way they can make that a bit easier for the player to respond and take part in the things that they need to take part in, all the better. So I'm hoping out of this, there will be some learning that then they can take from that to make this process better.
And the suspension automatically is 2 games. They've got it worked back to only 1, partly because I think there is some forgiveness over the confusion. And for Zach Collaros, I can understand that he's a little bit put out by this because he's a pretty straight up person. It's just a mistake that he made. But when you're in a bigger circle and you've got all of this happening, you need to be more attentive, as you're saying, and maybe the information has to be more readily apparent, that there's no illusions. These are the people that are trying to contact you, so that you don't just look at it and say that's spam.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. We've all done it, right? We've all looked at our phone and been like, nope, not taking that call because I don't know what it is. So I'm sure there is a part of that for sure.
Now, just down the road in Hamilton, the Tiger Cats have parted ways with one of the quarterbacks that we thought last year was going to make a splash. Apparently, it's not going to happen. That's Tylo Tagovailoa, who is now out of Hamilton. I don't know if it was a contract situation or if they just didn't have room for him on the roster.
Yeah, tough to say. I mean, there's been a few cuts coming across the league already that you're like, that's interesting. And so one thing that I've kind of started to do is go, well, it could be a medical thing. They know that they're not going to pass the medical. It could be a roster spot, as far as there's only so many people you can bring to camp now, and a lot of them that aren't being non-counters now. So it's not, there's only so many guys you can have there. And I wonder too, if they're, like you said, it could be a contract dispute. So there's lots of different reasons. And it's weird that we don't get more of that it's this player was released due to this. It's just they're released, right? And so we don't really know. And I get that there's probably some, when I get fired from my job, I'm not, but let's say I do, then they're not going to go to everybody and say, oh yeah, he got fired because of this. So maybe that's part of the reason, but there's definitely ones, I mean, that happened with the Elks here too, where Thomas Jacrodilla, who's coming into his 5th year as an offensive lineman, was a draft pick, released. Cornerback Kai Gray, released. And we're like, 2 years ago, he was the nominee for Rookie of the Year. Like, it seems it's an odd thing that those ones come up, but you have to think it's got to be either something to do medical or contract, or maybe there was a workout routine that wasn't being met, or a meetings schedule that wasn't being met. How do we know? We don't. But obviously there is a reason that those guys aren't going to fit in the team, and that's why they've moved on from them.
In Thomas Jack Gardia's case, he actually did sign a contract in January. He got his bonus money, his extension, and now this happens. And it does beg the question, what happened? What changed in the intervening weeks that now he's expendable?
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, when I see those ones, usually the week right before the rookie camp opens or the medicals and things, I wonder if that player just isn't healthy enough to get through the medical side of things, and instead of have them going through the medical and then putting them on a injured list or something like that, they release the player. So I'm not saying that is what the case was for Tomas. I know that he had really taken a step coming into last year and then got injured. We were kind of having him in kind of a battle for that position on the line, but I guess that this now solves that problem. So yeah, we know who's there.
And it may, to the outside world, appear cruel that these guys are being cut just in front of camp, but you got to think of it in their interests. For Kai Gray, Kadaya, they have now a chance to actually land somewhere else before camps are too far gone. And this, if the team is going to do anything to help the player along, including Tagovailoa, they're all now open to going to somewhere else while camps are still in their infancy.
There is. I mean, at this point, most of the rosters are basically set. I think they're now kind of watching for the injuries, right? They're the people that are going to be called when the injury comes. Then they're going to be the ones to step in. So I think that's kind of more. So it is a little late for that, in my opinion. But you never know. It could be like, well, we're not really seeing what we want at DB, and Kai Gray just became available, so maybe we'll give him a call.
Well, and Kai Gray especially threw me because he had been a nominee for
yeah, and last year it wasn't like he had an awful year. I wouldn't say he had as good a year last year as he did the year before, but I do think that he did still have a decent year. So that one was a bit of a surprise for us. I know we were talking about it camp even this morning and going, well, that kind of caught me off guard. Like, I didn't expect him to be released, but obviously something happened in there.
And the BC Lions, of course, watched Braden Lenius retire before he ever set foot on the field for them. And a nagging injury that just wasn't going to heal up. And he was straight up honest and said, look, I don't think I can play anymore. I don't think this is going to allow me to.
Right. Which is also good. And the players do have that ability, right? They can also retire right before camp. And then the team's like, ooh, who are we going to put in there? I guess it works both ways, but usually when it's the player, they usually say, well, I can't because of this. Where it's the team, it's just like they're released. So we're left a little bit guessing.
Your thoughts on the draft now that we're into camp and everything like that? Most of the teams have been able to sign most of the drafts. The notable exceptions are Taylor Elgersma, who's now signed with the Green Bay Packers, and of course Curtis Rourke, who's in camp with the San Francisco 49ers when they get going because he was drafted in the 7th round. Beyond that, though, you look down the board and you're seeing every day more and more names coming back.
I was able to follow a little bit of the draft on the actual draft night, but then I left and went out to the East Coast for 10 days, so I haven't really followed it up a whole lot. I know that the Elks, they signed 5 of their draft picks, and obviously they were at rookie camp and they have been at camp now. So it's always one of those things, though, when you're in those lower positions the year before, you're really watching for these draft picks. Are they going to make an impact right away? Where's that going to go? Especially with Edmonton this year, it was any of these draft picks are likely not in the starting roster unless they're on specials. So we'll kind of keep an eye on it. And of course, we had the one guy, which his name totally escapes me at this moment, who
Darian Newman.
Yeah. Now has a 1-year ban due to substance abuse. So now it's a guy like, well, we'll see what happens when he can join next year. See how that goes. So I'm kind of curious. There wasn't any ones that I was like, wow, I really need to follow that guy. So I kind of lost track of it this year.
Well, and the interesting thing about Newman, which it kind of surprised me that the Elks would, with their first draft pick overall, take a guy that probably wasn't going to be eligible for year. When you step back and you look at it, the Elks spent a lot of money on defensive line, especially Canadian defensive line, and they have the luxury of stepping back and say, yeah, we can wait the year. So long as he stays in shape, we're good.
Yeah, exactly. So then he ends up being a great pick for future. But when you look at a defensive line right now, when you've lined up with Robbie Smith, Noah Curtis, we already have some of that Canadian depth at the line. So it's not something that you have to race out and replace. So now we get a good guy. Yes, it's a year later. Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
I'm Tom Frazani, and you're listening to the Third Down Gamble podcast.
Head coach of the Toronto Argonauts, Ryan Dinwiddie, has come out and said that it's 50-50. Chad Kelly may be there for opening night. If you're the Argonauts, and given the way Dinwiddie can marshal quarterbacks, do you worry about that at all?
Not when Arbuckle's your backup. He just was the MVP of the Grey Cup. I don't think as an Argo fan you're worried about that at all, because it's a new season. It's always going to be up in the air who's going to play top of their game and who's going to take a little while to warm up, all those types of things. I think that's why you go out and have good backup quarterback, so that I think Mike and I were running through it earlier today. Really, Calgary, I mean, they have PJ Walker, but he hasn't really had any experience behind Vernon Adams Jr. But every other team has a quarterback that's either played a lot or been an MVP or has been around the league enough that they could step in as a good backup. Yeah, I never think it's a downgrade when you go from the guy that is, you want to make sure he's fully healthy before he plays, and the Grey Cup MVP, that won your team the Grey Cup. I think they're probably fine either way.
You bring up an interesting point about the depth at quarterback, and I'm thinking of the Rough Riders, and there's Jake Mayer, who they signed as an FA out of Calgary. But they've also got Jack Cohn, who's been under contract with the Rough Riders. And I'm beginning to wonder, given that they've got Tommy Stevens likely as a third string quarterback because of what he can do on third down, do you think that it's between Cohn and Mayer to get that second string quarterback job and be the backup to the starter?
I would say at this one, I mean, I'm sure they are selling it as a competition between the two of them, but my guess is that Mayer is the backup because he does have experience. Obviously, he's in a system now that he knew from before with the offensive coordinator. So I think that will help quite a bit for his position, at least in there. But he has the experience of a starter. I can't imagine that they have a real race. Likely Cohn ends up on the practice roster if he'll take that spot, and be able to learn from guys like Harris and Mayer that have been starters and have played for a little bit. I would lean towards Mayer being the kind of the given for the backup.
In Toronto, of course, you mentioned about Nick Arbuckle being back, but the other one is Cameron Dukes. The Argonauts pulled the rare trifecta of getting all three of their quarterbacks that were available to them last year back on the roster.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they have lots of options. Pretty, like I said, pretty hard to overlook Arbuckle after the way he played at the end of last year. But yeah, is Dukes a guy that they can still build on and work with? 100%. A kid has an arm, and he's great at sprinting out to the side when he needs to. Kind of, we went from being like, who are the next quarterbacks in the CFL, to every team has a pretty good quarterback and a decent backup. We have 3 Grey Cup MVPs as backups this year, and that is kind of stunning when you think about it. So yeah, I'm excited about that.
When I had Ben Grant, who does the color commentary with the Toronto Argonauts, talk about the East, he said it's going to be a barroom brawl. You really can't put anyone out in front right now because they're just going to have to slug it out and see who comes out on top. Is the West maybe moving toward that, where all 5 have a chance, like a legitimate chance to make some statement?
I think, and I understand that I am in Edmonton. This is not bias. This is actually looking at rosters. I think that 4 teams have a good chance to battle it out. Edmonton, I will say, would be like on the cusp of being in that 4, but I think BC, Winnipeg, and Saskatchewan are definitely going to be in a barroom brawl for that top spot. I think they're going to play very well. I obviously and hopefully want Edmonton to be in that race. I just don't know if Calgary has the horses yet in their depth to be able to be part of a knock 'em down race if it had to be with all 5 teams.
Well, Calgary, of course, had a lot of defections in free agency, and most notably Mike Rose coming over to Saskatchewan. But 2 of the 3 quarterbacks that were in the room last year are in Saskatchewan. The Stampeders look like they're rebuilding, and I just wonder if that's going to mean they're going to have to tread water for another year before they can really start making noise.
Yeah, probably something like that. And I've said this many, many times. I think we've gotten to a point in the league now that having a coach and GM is just not really feasible in this league anymore. And a lot of that has to do with you have to be the guy in one breath that says, well, I really only think you're worth this much. And in the next breath have to say, yeah, you're worth every penny and more on the field. And I don't know how you do that balance in this league anymore. Yeah, I think there's two things that are kind of up against them as far as Calgary is concerned. So as that year goes on, we'll see if they need to make adjustments for that.
It's great you mentioned that, because you think back to Chris Jones and what happened with the Rough Riders, what happened with the Elks. It didn't go so well, especially at the end of days in either situation.
Mm-hmm.
Wally Buono may be the last of that breed where he could do both and make it work well.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Yeah. And I think it was because in that day and age when he was there, you could coach the same way you could GM, because the players, it was kind of accepted that the coach could be a hard nose and you're not worth it kind of deal, and coach that way and still get the best out of his players. And I think in this day and age, that's not as possible, in being able to find out which is the ways that you can get the guys that are on your team to perform the best for you. Yes, there's times there has to be tough love and that type of thing, but you can't really like coach with an iron fist like you used to be able to. And I think that's part of why that dual position is so much harder to hold down now.
Yeah, I know it's early days still. The Elks still have yet to play a preseason game. Is there a different vibe around this team now with a new head coach who's a little bit more rah-rah, and a different feel about the team because maybe change is going to be for the better?
Yes, there is. I would say yes, there is. And even in some subtle thing, on day one of camp, it was not an all out, let's run out and just go high speed all the time. It was a teaching. It was a purposefully slower day to get everybody on board and excited, but let's make sure we're doing the right things right. And I really appreciated Mark Killam after the practice saying, we did that on purpose. We're trying to work these guys into game speed. We don't want anybody getting injured. And we also want them to learn, and we need to know how they learn. That is a complete 180 from a Chris Jones training camp that would be double barrel from the get-go, and people are running the whole time and let's get after it. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with a high-paced practice either, but there is a different feel. And even the guys as they come off the field are saying, I'm learning. I'm getting to know my teammates. I'm getting to know how they want us to do this and where they want us to be. I don't feel like I'm kind of trying to drink from the fire hose. It's a little bit more like, okay, yeah, there's some pressure, 100%, but they're working up to where, okay, now your evaluations are going to be because you should have caught on all this. We've given you every benefit of the doubt. I'm excited to see how that pans out.
Looking at the Rough Riders, it's the first time I've ever seen on opening day where they're working on special teams, teaching the Americans, especially coming up to play the game for the first time, that 5-yard buffer that they have to give on punt returns. There was also two other things that I noticed was more breaks. It was a 3.5-hour practice, but they had 2 scheduled breaks, water breaks and stretch breaks built in.
Yeah, and I think that's going kind of across the league right now. The first day for the Elks, it was 2-hour practice with obviously a stretch break in there. Today it was a 3-hour practice, and they had the stretch break and then another like water break, run into the washroom, do all the things you need to do kind of thing, and then back at it. I think that's the, and you're right though. I've seen probably more special teams in these 2 camp days than I saw in probably the entire first week of training camp last year. They are taking the time to try and work on that, to give the guys the ability to know what to do, but also to figure out who's going to be where, because a lot of the starters are probably decided. where you're really going to earn your spot is in special teams on this team right now.
And last thing before I let you get away, the Rough Riders are at a training camp at a university. The Red Blacks doing the same thing. The Argonauts are doing the same thing. What are the Elks doing for accommodations? Are the new players all together in one building, or are they spread out, billeted? How do they work that?
No, they all go into one spot as far as I know. They usually go into a hotel that's not far from downtown. They're bused like from the stadium, so they're bused back and forth. They seem to be more in one spot. One thing that they are doing different with this camp is their fan day. Usually that's held right at Commonwealth or at Clark Park that is right beside. But this year they're going out to the newer football facility that's in Sherwood Park. I feel like they might start taking fan day kind of on a tour where it's, Sherwood Park this year, could be Spruce Grove next year, then could be maybe back at Commonwealth, and they could do a return to Commonwealth type thing, but then do it kind of go around to some of these other spots just to make, even more people want to come out and be part of it.
Excellent. Andew Hoskins, thank you. It's always great to talk to you. The socials, where can people find and follow you?
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for having me on. It's always a great time to chat some football with you. And you can find us at the Turf District on all the different socials. Usually our show runs on Tuesday nights from 7:30 and it goes live on YouTube. And then the audio version comes out the day after. So join us, be part of the fun, and throw in your questions. We don't care what colors you wear or cheer for. We just want to be part of the CFL family.
Third Down Gamble uses the expert resources of the Canadian Football League and 3 Down Nation. For up-to-date, insightful statistics and analysis, please visit cfl.ca and 3downnation.com. The CFL on CBC theme music is used with written permission from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation.
Thank you for listening to our show. Third Down Gamble is hosted on Podbean. Follow us on Twitter, where our handle is @ThirdDownGamble. Join us again next time. The Third Down Gamble Podcast. Audio worth watching.